Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 43rd part of What If Deku Had a Robot Wolf. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 43, Danger Sense. Himiko was discharged from the hospital later that day. Tensei had come to pick them all up and take them back to the agency, with Shinigami apparently still out there working on a case. They had already given their statements to the police, save for Himiko, as she was in no condition to do so. She was quiet on the way back and kept close to Izumi and Durandal, the Durandal plush held close to her body. She was still shaken up from earlier and didn't want to leave her side. Which for most of the time didn't cause any problems, until she needed to go to the bathroom, that is, or have a shower. That's when things got difficult. Izumi didn't want to leave Himiko alone, but she didn't want her to watch her have a shower. Yes, they've showered in the same room before, but that was back at UA, and in different stalls. Not in the same stall. Yet that is what she ended up having to do, as Himiko insisted on not leaving her side. Which was an awkward time for her as she had never showered with someone else before. Had Himiko been in a better state of mind, she would probably have enjoyed this and teased Izumi constantly. But in her current state of mind, that wasn't happening. Didn't make it any more embarrassing for the green-haired girl. Being so close to another girl, another naked girl, was not something she was used to. She hadn't even had such intimate contact with Achiko yet. She could only hope that her girlfriend wouldn't be mad about this. Not knowing that her girlfriend was undergoing similar embarrassment, courtesy of Nijire refusing to leave her side due to the younger girl suffering from what was effectively 5 different mind rapes from 5 different people at the same time. Once that little embarrassing situation was over, they got ready for bed. Himiko was practically latching onto her, which, whilst embarrassing, was something Izumi was going to endure, as the alternative was to leave her alone and risk her getting worse. So, that night they went to sleep and snuggled up close to each other. Once again Izumi found herself in a black void. Her body was covered in black mist, but less of her body was covered by it. Parts of her right arm and hand were now visible. She still didn't have full movement, but it was progress. She looked up and saw 2 people before her. One was the man from before, the second user, as well as another man. He was a lean man with short, white hair, green eyes, and 2 scar-like cracks on the left side of his face. By the way he was dressed, he looked like a hobo. "Did I tell you it's Hermit?" the hobo-looking guy said, rubbing the back of his head. Ah, right, she forgot these people can hear her thoughts. Fuck. The second user sighed before he turned to look behind him. No, I did not teach her that. Izumi was confused for a moment before she noticed that there were more people around them. Black silhouettes made of the same black clouds that covered her body. Before you ask, those silhouettes are the other previous users. The second user said yes, even Toshinori, even though he isn't fully manifested yet. You just can't see them properly due to your body still getting used to one for all. The more quirks you unlock, the more of us you should be able to see. Still, I'm surprised you can't see Toshinori or Yoichi yet. You'll probably be able to see them once you've fully acclimated to one for all and fully unlocked our quirks, the other man said. Anyway, we haven't been properly introduced. I am Hikage Shinomori, the 4th user of One for All. The 4th user? That was odd. She expected to see the 3rd user next, not the 4th. Well, at least she knew the names of 3 of the past users. Second still withstanding. Wait, why was she even seeing him? Did she just unlock another quirk? She didn't feel like she unlocked something. On the contrary, you did unlock something, Hikage said. Do you remember, back during the Children of Blood attack, right before Himiko attacked you? Izumi nodded, not really wanting to remember that, watching Himiko die only to come back and attack her. But now that she thought about it, there was something else. A sudden sharp stabbing sensation in her head followed by a voice saying behind you. Which, now that she thought about it, had sounded a lot like Hikage. Yep, that was me. Hikage said you weren't fully used to my quirk at the time and probably wouldn't have known what the pain meant, so I helped you out a bit. But, that was my quirk you used back there, Danger Sense. He said it allowed me to detect any potential threats surrounding me, allowing me to react to them quickly. It's not perfect, as it doesn't tell you what the danger is, and it can be overwhelmed by multiple threats, plus you can't really turn it off. But since you already have anxiety, you shouldn't have a problem. The second user looked at Hikage with a judgmental glare before he tried to slap the back of the man's head, only for Hikage to easily dodge the slap, as well as all the following slaps sent his way, plus a few metal balls fired out of Second's gauntlets. Hikage dodged all of them. "Stop moving around, you slippery bastard!" The second user shouted as he continued to try, and fail, to hit Hikage. "Nope," Hikage replied with a smirk. "I had over 30 years to train my quirk, so I am very good at dodging things." Izumi sweat dropped at the antics of the two people before her. These were her predecessors? This was not what she was expecting from them, especially after meeting Second. But Hikage showing off his quirk was interesting. The way he was able to sense each attack and dodge them was impressive. It'll probably take her a while to get that good with it, but now that she knew what to look out for, and could get used to it. That is if she wasn't already trying to learn how to use gearshift. It's been just over a week since she got gearshift, and she was still trying to wrap her head around it. And now she had a second quirk to worry about, made worse by interning with someone who couldn't help her with it. She really wished Sir Night-Eye was still around. He was one of the few heroes who could help her learn how to handle all of One for All's moving parts. Eventually, the second user stopped trying to attack Hikage. As you can see, Hikage is a very slippery bastard thanks to his quirk. And thanks to One for All, he's only gotten more slippery. "Indeed it is," Hikage said with a smile when the third user gave it to me. "One for All was still very weak and couldn't really be used to kill All for One. So I spent 18 years in a secluded space building up its power. That was until this happened," he said, pointing towards his scars. "The human body was never designed to hold more than one quirk. The strain caused my body to age rapidly. Only someone who's quirkless like yourself or Tashinori can hold it without having your lifespan significantly reduced. The only person we know of who can have multiple quirks safely is All for One himself. And he's not someone we want to give this quirk to, now is he?" That got Izumi's attention. Having multiple quirks would eventually kill you? That was worrying. That meant that if she ever wanted to pass One for All on, it would have to be another quirkless person like herself. And that would be very difficult since fewer and fewer people were being born quirkless. And that's if One for All doesn't become too strong to pass on in the first place. Chances are she'd be the last welder of One for All. She was glad she was born quirkless. She did not want her life cut short because of One for All. "Anyway, don't worry yourself with that little aspect of One for All," Hikage continued. "It shouldn't affect you, hopefully. Anyway, when you wake up, Danger Sense should be fully operational. Just be prepared for the occasional headache when you wake up." Izumi gave him a thumbs up. Admittedly, she was still annoyed to be getting a new quirk so soon, but she guessed that neither she nor the previous users had any control over when their quirks manifested. All she could do was prepare herself for future quirk manifestations. The world around her suddenly started to get dark as black smoke started to rise around them. Guess her time here was over once more. She closed her eyes and went back to sleep. One for All seems to be progressing quickly. Too quickly. What do you mean? I expected it to take months for One for All to reach singularity. Yet it only took a few weeks for that to happen. One for All wasn't powerful enough to reach singularity in such a short amount of time. She shouldn't have been able to use one of our quirks by now, let alone 2-inch. Why do you think that happened? I don't know. But One for All got a much larger power boost than it should have when Ninth received it. If Izumi had a quirk, then it would make sense. But she doesn't, we checked. Maybe there's an additional quirk hidden within One for All? If there was, wouldn't we be aware of it? Or at least see the vestige of it? Wait, isn't One for All itself 2 quirks merged together? What if All for One accidentally gave you 2 quirks instead of 1? I highly doubt it. My brother only passed 1 quirk to me. Not 2. He made sure of that. Plus, if he did give me a second quirk, I would have felt it. But he didn't. And none of us accidentally passed it on to anyone else, so that's out. So, if there are no additional quirks in here, and Izumi's quirkless, then something else is empowering one for all. Something outside of it. Looks like it. But what? What has the power to feed a quirk like one for all? Maybe it's got something to do with Durandal's quirk emulator? We don't know much about it after all. It's possible. She was wearing him when she first used it. Maybe the emulator gave one for all a power boost. But we're going to need more data before we draw a conclusion. For all we know, we could have just miscalculated how long it would take for one for all to reach singularity within Izumi. Whatever the case is, we should keep a watchful eye on Ninth. All for One is sadly still out there, and when he finds out she has one for all, he will come for her. We will need to be ready for him. How did he even survive? We watched Eighth crush his entire skull, followed by Night Eye, Gran, and that sniper chick immolating the body. There was nothing left of him. He should not have survived. I don't know how my brother survived. All I know is that he did. Tamura would not share my family name unless one for all was around to give it to him. And those Nomu would not be able to exist without his assistance. Let's just hope she doesn't have to fight him anytime soon. She's not ready to face pure evil. Izumi had a surprisingly comfortable night, all things considered. Okay, so manifesting another of the previous user's quirks and finding out that giving one for all to someone with a quirk would be a death sentence, as well as watching one of your friends die in front of you only to come back different, you would think it would make sleep difficult. But she slept peacefully that night. Weird, but she wasn't complaining. She slowly opened her eyes and looked down. Himiko was fast asleep, her head nestled against her chest. A slight blush formed on Izumi's face. It was still strange seeing her blonde friend with red hair, but she guessed that she was going to have to get used to it. Still, she was glad that Himiko was okay. Wait, why could she not only feel another pair of arms around her, but also something soft pressing against her back? The blush on her face got brighter as she slowly turned her head and, to her horror, found Rolls snuggled up behind her, wearing nothing but a pair of dark red panties and a matching bra. Izumi's blush went atomic. When the fuck did she get in here? She didn't remember allowing her in. She has the same brand as Momo, Izumi thought before her blush got worse. Stop admiring her cleavage and focus. How the hell did she get in here? Just need to wake her up and get some answers without waking up Himiko. She looked back down at Himiko in an attempt to look away from Roll's rather curvy body. Only to find herself staring the other girl dead in the eyes. Izumi, Himiko purred, a large smirk on her face. I didn't know you wanted to grope my rear that badly? TTT, that's not me. Izumi stuttered out a reply, making sure to check that her hands were indeed not on Himiko's arse. Himiko looked at her with a confused look. Then, if it's not you, who's currently groping my rear? She asked before she, much to Izumi's horror, got up and looked over her. Holy moly, she's bigger than Momo. Rolls groaned as she woke up, and instantly realized she wasn't in her own bed or snuggled up to her girlfriend. When the fuck did I get here? You walked in here, Durandal replied. Heard you banging against the door and decided to let you in. And you just walked over to the bed, got yourself comfortable, and went back to sleep. Didn't want to disturb you since it would disturb Izumi and Himiko. So I let it slide. For now. You let her in? Izumi asked, a slightly horrified look on her red face. What else was I supposed to do, try and wake her up? Durandal said the last thing you want to do is to disturb someone who's sleepwalking. They may lash out. And with someone who can easily throw me and everything around her with the power of her mind, I decided it was best to just let her walk and go back to sleep. Rolls let out an annoyed sigh. I thought I stopped doing that. Do you have problems with sleepwalking? Himiko asked, not at all bothered that Rolls had been groping her rear. Rolls nodded. Yeah, I did, back when I was young. My older sister kept having to lock my bedroom door just to stop me from walking out of my room and accidentally falling down the stairs. You have an older sister? Izumi asked, legitimately concerned that there may be another telepathy like her out there. Rolls nodded as she laid back in bed. Yeah. She's an already established pro hero, a good one too, and the only real family I have. Her mom died during the Avalon War. I never met my mother. And Dad, well, we've only seen him a few times, and even then he was only around for a day or so and didn't really interact with us. It was just us growing up. Well, us and a friend of our father's. Izumi frowned. A mother she never knew, a father who's never around, and an older sister whose mother died during the war. It didn't matter if both girls' quirk was questionable, no one should grow up like that. You must love your sister very much? Himiko asked. Rolls nodded yep. She was one of the few people who wanted to be around me. I didn't have many friends growing up. People were always distrustful of me since I could easily read their minds. Not that I ever did. It's easy to just block the thoughts of others and just not hear anything other than what your ears can pick up. But, no matter how many times I told them that I wasn't reading their minds, no one believed me, not even the teachers. Even wearing quirk suppression cuffs to school didn't do anything to calm their nerves, or stop the teachers from docking points from my work for supposed cheating. It's only really when I came to CI that I started making friends again. Izumi lowered her head. Of course people would be distrustful of someone like Rolls. After all, how can you trust someone who can easily know what you're thinking? It was easy to be distrustful of someone with a quirk like that. Hell, she found it easy to be distrustful of Rolls just because her quirk was similar to the non-quirk abilities of Eri. Was it just that easy to be distrustful of such people? Thinking about it now, Eri will probably be having similar problems as well, especially when she gets a hang of her powers. How easy it is to forget that some quirks just make others more distrustful of you. I should probably go, Rolls said as she moved to get up. No doubt Psycho would be having words with her about this. Not knowing that her girlfriend had found herself in a similar situation with a certain blue-skinned girl. She was about to get up off the bed when she felt a hand grab her arm. Wait, Izumi said gently, you can stay with us, if you want to, that is. Rolls looked at her with a surprised look on her face. Are you sure? I didn't exactly ask for permission to be here after all. It's alright, Izumi replied with a soft smile. I have a friend back at UA who didn't ask permission for snuggles either. Yet I allowed her to join our little snuggle group. You have a snuggle group? Rolls asked. Himiko nodded yep. We call it the Snuggle Squad. It's just a group of us girls who came together after a certain incident at school for comfort snuggling, she said with a smile. We can make you an honorary snuggle buddy. If you want to, that is. Rolls gave them a soft smile. I'd like that, she said before Himiko dragged her back into bed for snuggles. Izumi was still somewhat worried about Rolls, but after that little talk, she was going to be a bit more considerate. She judged the girl far too quickly. Yes, she had powers just like Eri's non-quirk powers. Yes, she had red shoes because, of course, Izumi would notice that. How could you not notice something like that when you've had to wear quirkless reds your entire life? But even if her powers were suspicious, doesn't mean the girl herself was suspicious. Rolls wasn't lying about what happened to her, about not knowing her parents well or being distrusted at school, that much Izumi could tell. She didn't know how she could easily tell this, but she had a sort of gut feeling that what Rolls said wasn't a lie. There was a possibility that Rolls was like Eri in a way, not knowing about the origins of her powers but making do with what she had. But that was only a possibility, not a fact. She was still going to be wary of the girl, just not as wary as she was before. Rolls laid back down on the bed and made herself comfortable before snuggling up to Izumi from behind. They still had a good hour or two before they had to get up, so they had enough time for some snuggling. When Izumi woke up again, she found herself smothered between two pairs of soft spheres. When morning came and everyone had gotten dressed for the day, Izumi and Durandal were making their way to the agency's cafeteria, Himiko following slowly behind them. Himiko was looking better. She was starting to act like she used to, but there was a hollowness to it. She may not look like it, but she was still shaken after yesterday's events, hiding her fear behind the mask of a smile. Izumi would have been impressed if she didn't know how much pain the girl was in. It'll take more than a good night's sleep to recover from what happened. In the meantime, all she could do was keep an eye on her and make sure she was alright. They had been given the day off after yesterday's attack. What the students went through was horrifying, and it was hard to think of anything else so soon after the attack. So they were given some time to calm down and clear their heads. However, Himiko was probably going to have more time off, since the incident affected her the most. Izumi expected today to be normal, calm, and relaxing. A simple day to wind down after yesterday's attack. She did not, however, expect to walk into the cafeteria and find a woman cosplaying as L from Death Note, sitting exactly the same way he would, looking over a table covered in stuff and eating a large slice of cake. Izumi, what's war? Himiko said as she walked up behind her and noticed the cosplayer. What the fuck? The L cosplayer ignored them, focusing instead on the stuff on the table. Which Izumi realized was a selection of photos, documents, and evidence bags. Oh hey guys, Toru said as she walked up beside them. I see you've met my mentor for the week. The three turned towards the invisible girl. That's Shinigami? Shinigami? Izumi asked. I prefer Ryuzaki when I'm not working. Izumi jumped and turned around, finding herself looking at the L cosplayer, who was now standing only a few feet away from her. How the hell did she get over here so quickly? You've got to be kidding me. Durandal sighed. She's even using the same cover name. Himiko, clearly confused, decided to channel her inner Tsu, something that was remarkably easy, and bluntly asked, why are you dressed and acting like L from Death Note? The woman, Shinigami/L/Ryuzaki/ whatever the fuck she was calling herself, just looked at her with an unimpressed look before offering her a strawberry. If you keep this secret, this strawberry is yours. Himiko looked at the strawberry with confused eyes before she slowly took it. Durandal sighed. She's even using the same comically small bribes. Izumi just stared at the hero with confused eyes. This was the hero Toru was interning with? A Death Note fangirl who decided to model herself after L of all people. Hitoshi was going to lose his shit when he hears about this. Anyway, if you can excuse me, I need to get back to work, Ryuzaki said before she turned and walked back over to the table she was working at. The four students just watched as the women went back to work, mostly confused by what had happened. Himiko looked at her bag of blood gummies. I'm going to need more of these. Izumi nodded in agreement. This was a very odd start to the day. Tamura sighed as he worked on his laptop, Kurogiri busy tending to his bar. He would have liked to have been playing games right now, but instead, he was doing research into yesterday's Children of Blood attack, just to see if any of them had potential as either new recruits or as Nomo material. Sadly, none of them fit the criteria for either role. The vast majority of their members were badly trained, most not even knowing how to hold a sword properly. And those who didn't use swords weren't very good with them either. And then there were their quirks, most of which aren't useful in combat at all, and the few that were weak and useless to them. There were a few useful mental quirks among them, but unless they wanted to make a high-end Noma with them, they were also useless. Plus the only heroes their group had been successful in killing in the past were all retired heroes, most of whom had already been crippled by Stain. Cowards. Attack the active ones, you fucks. And then there was the Scion of Blood, who tried to take on Endeavor, all by himself. Needless to say, he failed. He was only 2 minutes into a speech on how he was going to kill Endeavor before the man got bored and just punched the Scion in the face. Well, at least he knew the man's real name now, and quirk. Unblinking, the guy didn't need to blink his eyes. That was his quirk, the ability to never need to blink. What a lame quirk. And then there was the man's employment history. Apparently, he used to work as a weapon instructor at a hero school, specifically, Shiketsu High School. He was fired after it was found out that his teaching methods were inadequate, and that he wasn't teaching his students to fight villains, but so that he could beat them in every training exercise they had, and be called the best trainer by his students. He would later be put into a mental institute where he would later develop a fascination with Stain and escape, killing several of the hospital staff in the process. Well, that explains why his followers were so badly trained. They were being trained by an idiot. He had a feeling that the Scion had never actually met or was trained by Stain. How's your research going? Kurogiri asked as he finished clearing another glass. It's going well, Tamura replied, but I'm not liking what I'm seeing. The Scion of Blood was crazy, literally. He was in a mental institute before he founded the Children of Blood, and was a training instructor before that. A shit training instructor too. I am so glad we didn't entrust them with any of the good Nomu. They would have wasted them on pointless attacks. Explains why most of his followers were bad fighters, Kurojiri remarked. What about our Nomu? How well did they fare? Tamura smirked. 2 of them may have died, and the third was captured, but they caused plenty of carnage beforehand. 40 people died by their hands, most of them were soldiers and COB members, but several civilians and a pro-hero were also killed. They did well and got us some attention. Yes, most of it is directed to the children, but there are a few stories about us, he said, and with the children out of the way, most of the attention will now be on us. Hopefully, this'll give us a rep we can use. The door to the bar suddenly opened and a man walked in. He had short gray hair, a small mustache and a goatee on his chin. He had a smirk on his face, revealing that one of his front teeth was missing. He was wearing a pair of purple dress pants with a matching blazer, plain black shoes, a shirt that was partially unbuttoned at the top, and a pair of circular glasses on his face. He also had a cigarette in his mouth. Why, hello there, friends, the man said as he walked in, not disturbing anyone. Jiren, Tamura said as the man walked over. Do you have something for me? Indeed I do, Jiren said before he pulled out 2 photos from his blazer and put them on the table next to Tamura. They were police mugshots of 2 men. One was a man with short, messy black hair, a tired-looking bagged eye, and an odd-looking gray diving helmet covering the left side of his face. The other was a large man with large brown eyes, and orange, flame-shaped hair. Curator and Volcano, 2 villains who were arrested a few years ago, Jiren said. Well, up until last night when they broke out of prison. They're currently on the run, but I'm sure you could offer them a place to stay within your league. Tamura looked at the 2 pictures before quickly looking the 2 men up and was quite impressed by what he found. Curator, real name unknown. Leader of the wild villains, worked mostly in the shadows but had a reputation for rather violent acts against several heroes. Even mauling one to death. Nice. Volcano, real name Maguma Iwata. Leader of the Volcano Thieves. Has quite a large list of crimes ranging from theft, grand theft auto, robbery, burglary, assaulting police officers, destruction of private property, and made a habit of messing around with Endeavor. Interesting, Tamura said with a smile. Anything else? Yeah, there's more. The 2 had, well, sidekicks for the lack of a better term. Gust Boy for Volcano, and Bearhead for Curator. Volcano had a 3rd sidekick, a woman named Dusty Ash, but she was killed during a prison riot last year. Only casualty too. Killed during a prison riot, Tamura said, not very impressive. Well, there's not much you can do to defend yourself during a prison riot when you're down a leg and stuck in the infirmary, now can you? Jiren said. Besides, she actually crippled several police officers as well as 2 heroes during her career. Lost the leg to friendly fire apparently. Interesting, Tamura remarked. Now he was annoyed that Dusty Ash was dead. She sounded right up their alley. Well, at least they were able to get the leader. Well, these 4 sound like they'll fit in perfectly. See if you can organize a meeting with them, he said as he passed Jiren the 2 pictures, as well as a note he secretly slipped in between the 2. I'll try, Jiren said as he pocketed the pictures. It might take some time though. Both of them are on the run and on opposite sides of the country, so finding them will be a challenge. But I'm sure I can find them within a month or so. Maybe a week if I'm lucky, he said. In the meantime, there's someone else you may be interested in, another Stain follower but not a member of the Children of Blood. He was arrested a few weeks ago, during his attempt to kill Death Arms. And unlike the children, this guy has a reputation for killing heroes, and not ones who were already retired or crippled. Might be a nice addition as well, if you can break him out, that is. Luckily he's being transferred next week, so if you want him, you'll have time to plan out how to break him out. I'll think about it, Tamura said, not really wanting to trust another Stain fanatic. But the guy had killed heroes before, so he might be worth it. Well, I wish you luck with your other endeavors. Hopefully you can find them quickly. We need all the help we can get. Jiren nodded. Don't worry. These people won't disappoint you, he said anyway. Anything else you need? I can get you into contact with some people who can make support equipment for you. I'll think about it, Tamura remarked. Whilst support gear would be useful, he needed to know who he needed to get gear for before he got equipment for them. Support gear would be useless if it doesn't blend well with the person using it. Well then, Jiren said before he turned. I'll be in touch, he said before he walked towards the door and left. Tamura waited for Jiren to leave before he turned towards the TV. I know you're listening, he said. The audio only sign in only on the TV when someone is listening in. Apologies, the therapist said. I wanted to tell you something, but you were busy at the time. So I decided to wait. Noted, Tamura said. So, what do you want to tell me? Yes, well, I have a problem, the therapist said. An important specimen of mine recently escaped and is loose out in the world. A bee. I'm sorry, what? Tamura said as he looked up and turned towards the TV. You want me to find a fucking bee? Are you crazy? Do you know how many bees there are in Japan alone? Over 1 billion, the therapist replied, and this is a specific bee. Shouldn't be too difficult to find, it's just a normal bee with an extremely bloated abdomen. Barring that, check the registry of young girls in the Mizurufu area who suddenly lost an eye sometime during the past week. The bee may have buried itself into their eye. That's gross, Tamura remarked. And why Mizurufu? That's the area where the bee was last seen, the therapist replied. The bee's a parasite. It controls people by burying into their faces and controlling them. We need her on our side. Her bees can be very powerful and useful. But do not expect her to be corporate. Her previous hosts have been rather annoying. Seriously, she's fine with using trigger but not my mutation chemical. What's the fucking difference? He muttered. Tamura shook his head. He really hated side quests like this. Made him feel like an errand boy since most of them were so fucking mundane and could be easily done by the quest giver themselves. Seriously, do it yourself, you fuckers. Don't get the guy trying to save the fucking world to do it for you. Lazy bastards. Fine, I'll look into it, he said with a sigh, but don't expect much. Mizurufu is a big area and has UA watching over it. I don't want to risk being in the area for too long, not after our failure at the USJ. I understand, the therapist said, but do try and make an effort. This bee can be of great use to you. I'll try, Tamura said before the screen went fully dark. He sighed. There was no way he was going on another one of the therapist's little fetch quests. The last time he went on one he did not enjoy it. Seriously, that was one rubber duck he did not want to see again. Thank you, the therapist said before the screen went dark once more. Tamura sighed, shook his head, and went back to his research. This bee sounded more trouble than it was worth. If the therapist was having trouble getting this bee to behave, then it was, oh fuck, he just made a bee pun, was unlikely that he would be able to get this bee to cooperate with him, especially when it found out he was working with the guy. So he'd only put the bare minimum into searching for this bee and focus on other things that were more important. Besides, he had 5 potential new recruits that would be far easier to recruit than an annoying bee. And with any luck, more will follow. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 44. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.